And she said, you know what? Anyone who goes through any type of trauma can experience PTSD. But what you need to know about this is that PTSD doesn't just go away, you learn to manage it.
Mhm.
Negative and positive self-talk is going to help you moving forward. And
Right.
so we talk about language a lot. We talk about finding center
Mm.
when they feel out of sort. It was really important for me, yes, to have him there with me, but it was more important for me to love myself enough to do it for myself.
Right.
You don't always have to have family members. You can pick and choose who you want on this journey. That's the
Okay.
beautiful way of life, right?
Right. Welcome everyone to another episode of ULab Central, and today I'm joined with Miss Susan Snow. So, Susan, can you tell me and our audience as to why they should be excited about our conversation today?
Well, I think you'll see a message of hope and healing in my message, in my story. Um, I can tell you a little bit about my story so that you know
Yeah.
where I'm coming from and kind of where the journey is taken me because of this healing journey I've taken. Um, so it all started, I was 17 years old.
Mhm.
And at the time, my dad was a Los Angeles police detective. He was a robbery homicide detective. And the morning of Halloween, 1985, he was getting ready to go to court um, and testify in it was a case that he was the lead detective on. And um, I, being a teenager, wanted to go to a party that night
Yeah.
and asked him, and he said absolutely no because it was a school night. Dad was strict. um, and so the plan was that he was going to leave court and go pick up. I had a 6-year-old brother at the time,
Yeah.
and he would go pick him up from school, and then my mom would come home,
Mhm.
and then he would come home, and then I would just try to get my parents to say yes to me going to
Yeah.
this party. Um, so the plan happened where my mom came home and she was getting her costume off. She had a costume party at for Halloween at her work, and I was proceeding to get my costume on when the phone rang.
Mhm.
And I ran to the phone and picked it up, thinking it was just for me, anyways. And it wasn't. It
Mhm.
was a lady from my brother's school.
Yeah.
And all she said was that there was a drive-by shooting and my dad was involved. And at that moment, I just I didn't know what to do. My mom came around the corner and I just handed her the phone. And as I watched her talk to this lady on the phone, I watched her body language and um, I just knew in seeing her body language that it was bad. She got off the phone and looked at me and said, "We're going to the school." So we went to the school. It was about a 7-minute drive. And because it was later in the day, the kids were getting off school at the back of the school. And there is a parking lot that's in the middle of the school. So that's where we parked and we headed towards the back of the school. Um, at that point, all we could see, even though it was dark outside, the sky was lit up by all the police cars' lights. And there was an ambulance sitting in the middle of the road. Um, and we were walking, we caught my dad's truck and started to run towards it. As we got closer to the truck, we realized there was glass on the ground. And as we rounded the corner, there he was, partially covered up. At that point, I just froze, and my mom dropped to her knees and screamed. Um, I was not capable of connecting the dots at that point. Like, I didn't understand what I was seeing, even though I was seeing it. And so what I ended up doing is hyper focusing on the ambulance. And my mind was saying, why isn't anyone helping him? Like it was not connecting. Um, Pretty quickly, there were two officers that took us aside and escorted us back into the school, and we went into an office. And as we got into the office, I sat down on a chair, and my mom got pulled aside by some detectives. Now, at this point, I had no idea if my brother was alive, if he was hurt. Like, I had no idea.
Mhm.
I didn't find out till later that my dad saved his life.
Mhm.
But still, at that time, I didn't know where he was. And as I was sitting there trying to process as a kid myself, just trying to process everything that was going on around me, and there was so much chaos going on around me, and that I just sat there. And as I was sitting there, there were two women that worked at the school that were having a conversation, and the one lady said to the other that my dad was deceased.
Okay.
And once I heard those words, that's when my world cracked. Um, at that point, I just wanted to run out of that room and run as far away from the situation as I could.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, my physical body felt like it was filled with cement and I couldn't move. My mom came up and talked to me and said, I'm sending you with a neighbor. And so even though I wanted to run out of that room, the kid version of me wanted to stay with my family. I needed that support system. I needed the adult to help me navigate all of these feelings I was feeling. And there was so much going on because my dad and I were very, very close. Um, he was my voice of reason. He was my security system. I always felt secure with him. Um, my mom and I did not have a super healthy relationship. So when I say he was my voice of reason, he was the reason we didn't kill each other. Um, and now that's gone.
Yeah.
And I'm being sent to the neighbor's house. And this neighbor knew us for years and years. And she was trying to process everything. There was a lot going on in our neighborhood. There were police presence everywhere. There were helicopters. Um, and here she has his daughter in front of her, just inconsolable. I was just completely inconsolable. And at the time, I had been dating a boy for 3 months. And at that point, all I wanted was my boyfriend. So I asked her to call him. And she did. And he came, and she didn't give him a whole lot of information. So when he showed up, he did what everybody would do. He was like, grab your purse, grab your jacket. What hospital is he at? Where's your mom? Where's your brother? Asking the normal questions. And I just couldn't spit out the words. I couldn't say it. And the more persistent he was about us leaving, I finally did. And I blurted it out. He's gone. And he said, What do you mean he's gone? And I said, He's gone. He's not at a hospital. And I watched him collapse and start sobbing. And so both of us were just trying to navigate all of this, not knowing what our next step was, not knowing the future. There was just so much going on. And um, back then in the 80s, there was no talk of mental health. There were no resources for kids.
Yep.
Even LAPD had systems in place and resources for the widows and the widowers.
Yep.
They really didn't have a lot in place for the children.
Mhm.
And so when I did finally go home that night, there were tons of people in my house. So I didn't even get to grieve privately. There was always someone in my face all the time. When I got home, I could hear my mom, um, but she didn't come out to greet me or anything like that. She was busy. There was, like I said, it was a chaotic night. There was a lot going on. And so I just hid in my room. Um, I just went straight to my room and I closed the door and I didn't want to answer any questions. I just wanted to be there with my boyfriend and just trying to navigate all of these like feelings that I was having. Um, the shock, um, I was terrified, because, it's not normal to have that much police presence. It's a little intimidating. Um, and they didn't catch the guys for 6 days. So we lived like that for 6 days. Um, I saw my brother, I heard him crying in the middle of the night that night, but I just didn't have anything left in me to console him. I just I was glad to hear him cry because then I knew he was okay physically, not mentally, obviously. But for the 6 days, I didn't sleep. All of the things that were happening to me, I didn't understand.
Yeah.
I literally felt like I was crazy, like I was nuts, like something snapped in me,
Mhm.
because I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't sleep, but I couldn't get out of bed. I was living a fog, like I was just existing. I wasn't even like living at that point. I had panic attacks constantly, and I had no tools to work myself through these things. So I just suffered in silence. Um, and it wasn't until about a month after everything calmed down and people left and they caught the guys and we had the funeral that my mom came to me and she said, LAPD was paying for a therapist for all three of us. And at the time, my teenage brain was just like, well, if you go to therapy, you must be crazy, because that's just how I felt. Um, but I was also in a state of mind where you could just push me in a direction, and that's the direction I would go.
Yeah.
And so when my mom like told me that I was going to this therapist, I was like, okay, I I guess that's what I'm doing. In hindsight, the therapist that I saw, um, he didn't, I don't feel that he was capable of handling my type of trauma. Um, and now what I know now, he wasn't trauma competent. He wasn't even, he just didn't go there. He didn't ask the question, like, how did this night affect you? Like, it never came out of his mouth, which people are like, what? What? But if he didn't know how to handle it, I can see where he would avoid it, right? Because he didn't want to go into the weeds with me.
Yeah.
Um, so the entire year that I saw this man, every week that I saw him, I was like, oh, today's the day. He's going to make me feel better.
Yeah.
And I'd come out of the session feeling no different.
Mhm.
And after a year, he looked at me and he said, Susan, you're a well-rounded young lady and you're going to be fine for the rest of your life. And I don't need to see you anymore. And I was shocked, for one, but immediately my mindset went to, oh my God, I'm nuts. I'm crazy. I've cracked. Not even professional can help me. I'm going to have to figure this out on my own.
Yeah.
And so what I ended up doing is hiding. I hid behind people telling me, you're so strong. You're so brave. You're so this, you're so that. And so I created an emotional mask with those words. So even though there was so much turmoil and things going on inside of me, the external side never saw it. My friends never saw it. My even my boyfriend at times never saw it, you know. My mom never saw it because she kind of cocooned into herself and really kind of pushed me aside and didn't check in with me. So she had no idea what was going on with me. And I lived like this. I lived in fight or flight in behind that mask for 14 years of my life.
Mhm.
And in hindsight, looking back, I thought, oh my gosh, like I kept myself from living fully because I I have a chapter in my book which I'll talk to you later but about it but um called rose-colored glasses because that's what I did. I was not able or capable of recognizing relationships that weren't to my my best interest. And so I had friendships that were not fantastic. They're not great. They weren't healthy. My relationship with my mother, same thing. And my brother and I mean, we're 10 years apart. So he had a different type of trauma and different type of healing than I did. And so really, I just was really good at hiding. I was really good at hiding. People would come to me and say, "How can I help you?" or "How can I support you?" And I'd push them away, and I'd say, "Nope, this is not your burden. This is mine. Like I'm not putting this on you. It's not fair." And in hindsight, that was dumb. But you don't know what you don't know. And when you're living in fight or flight, it definitely, you don't see things clearly. Um, Even though they're right in your face, you still don't see it. And it wasn't until I married the boyfriend, which we're still together,
That's great.
almost 40 years later. It's just
That's
crazy.
amazing.
um, Married him, and I had two kids, and we decided to leave Southern California and move to Colorado,
Yeah.
Denver. I needed to get out of there. I needed to because um, the case, the reason why my dad was assassinated, and he was assassinated, it was a planned out murder of my dad. The men that were convicted, two of them were still in prison, or three of them were in prison. But at the same time, like I spent many years looking behind my shoulder, just
Yeah.
waiting for the shoe to drop. Um, and I needed to distance myself from it.
Yeah.
So we moved, and I told nobody my story, and unless they were like very close friends, but I just wanted to kind of push that part of my life aside and pretend. Um, and so I was working as a hairdresser at the time and was working at a salon that was very close to Littleton, Colorado.
Yeah.
We moved in April of 97, and April 20th of 1999, I was working that day doing a client's hair. I took a break. I went into the back room and I turned on our little TV set back there, and up popped the live coverage of the Columbine shootings. And when I watched that on TV, all of a sudden, everything that happened the night my dad was killed came flooding back. I had flashbacks of that night as I was watching the coverage and seeing the kids that were around my same age, and it was at a school, and there were police cars everywhere and ambulances. It just hit me like a ton of bricks, and I became pale. I started sweating and having a panic attack. And remember, none of my colleagues knew what the heck was going on with me, and I didn't either because I was told I was going to be fine for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so, uh, my colleagues were like, I don't get it. You're too young to have kids that go there, and you've told us where you live, so you don't live anywhere near Littleton. And I said, I don't know. I can't answer you. But what I ended up doing is what my old habit was, and I put that mask right back on again, and I went out and I finished my day. And everybody around me was upset. They were angry, they were crying, there was so much going on. And I was just like, nope, this is not going to affect me. I finished my day. I walked out the door to get in my car, and it all came flooded back tenfold.
Yeah.
Now I could feel myself
Yeah.
spiraling. And it scared me because I started to have the suicidal ideation again. I was the panicky, the sense of being on pins and needles, came back. I stopped sleeping. Um, all the things that I had gone through before. And it felt almost stronger now because I was older and I had more responsibilities. So I had two small children and suicidal ideation where I didn't want to feel this pain anymore, but I had babies that I didn't want to leave.
Yeah.
So, my husband,
Yeah.
being the smart man that he is, met me at the door and he said, you have two choices. You either get help or I'm putting you in a hospital. And at that point, I was so afraid that I put up that white flag and I said, I give up and okay, I'll go get help. And I made an appointment. I went to a physician
Mhm.
first. He put me on antidepressants because that's what they do. And then he handed me a business card and he said, Susan, I want you to make an appointment with this therapist.
Mhm.
And I literally laughed in his face. I said, I tried this 14 years ago. I tried this. It didn't work. Like, I don't know what you think that it's going to be different this time. And he said, well, you don't have any choice. So you've got to do this. And I said, all right, and so I made an appointment and saw this woman. And within the first 3 minutes of sitting in her chair, I realized this was different. Um, she was asking me the questions. And she told me, she specializes in severe trauma and her specialty was PTSD. And I was like, oh, that's okay. But I felt this like feeling that she was a safe space and I was able to be vulnerable with her
Mhm.
and tell her everything that I had gone through at 17 and what I was currently dealing with. And she looked me in the face and she said, uh, everything you've gone through since you were 17 is normal
Mhm.
because you have PTSD. And I thought, well, wait a minute. I am not in the military. I didn't go to war.
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about, And she said, you know what? Anyone who goes through any type of trauma can experience PTSD. But what you need to know about this is that PTSD doesn't just go away, you learn to manage it.
Okay.
And I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my God, you mean I'm not crazy? I haven't snapped. I can heal from this. For the first time in my life, I had hope. I mean, it was an absolute incredible feeling of knowing that finally, after all these years, I had my person that was going to help me and guide me through healing.
Yeah.
And I felt so grateful in that moment.
Mhm. So yeah, I mean, you've gone through a long journey. I don't know how to express myself right now as to trying to process this whole journey that you've been
It's
through.
a lot. I know
Yeah.
it is.
So, I mean, reminiscing this on a regular basis, probably, I mean, after you've come out of it, after you've accepted it, going through the last therapy that you went through, acceptance is probably one of the things that was focused upon, I guess. I mean, you must have had that discussion. And then you mentioned that child support was not something that the police was specializing in at that time. Yeah.
Mm-mm.
Uh, but tell me about this, about your healing journey, right? After this, the last therapy that you went through.
Sure.
Because, I mean, it's not that there are a lot of people like you, and how have you been helping them? Because I guess that's where you found your purpose, right? Where you're trying to help others come out of it. So,
Yeah.
so if you could.
Well, I think for me, I
Mhm,
mean, the one thing that I was really grateful for is that she didn't overwhelm me
mhm,
initially. So we really kind of took my healing in chunks, like really chunked it down. So my first session with her was, what is the one thing right now that you're really struggling with? And at the time, it was the lack of sleep.
yeah,
Because if you don't sleep, then you are, your depression becomes worse,
yeah,
your anxiety, because your nervous system is not regulated. So, she said, let's attack that first. Let's get you sleeping. What happens when you go to sleep? And what would happen to me is that I was terrified of closing my eyes because if I closed my eyes, then I would go to a dark place.
yeah.
And so she said, "Okay, let's address that." So initially what she ended up doing is she just like walked me through what would happen. And I told her, the minute it started to get dark at night and I knew I was going to have to go to sleep, it would start the anxiety and my nervous system would get all kinds of out of whack. And then I would try to go to sleep, but my brain would just turn on. And there's a lot of that, that
Yeah.
happens. And so my brain would turn on. So she said, "Okay, have you ever thought of journaling?" And I thought, what? No, I don't even know what you're talking about. And she said, well, you can journal in different ways. Like some people like to write, some people like to do music, um, and some people like to do art, and it's a way of getting what's in your head out. So she said, what do you like to do? And I said, well, I write. And she said, okay, let's try that. Get a pad of paper and a pen and stick it by your nightstand. And before you go to bed, I just want you to take everything that's in your brain and write it on that paper. And don't worry about, punctuation or spelling, or even if it makes any sense, it doesn't matter. You are just getting everything out. And I looked at her and I said, are you sure about this? Like, I was such a skeptic. And she said, yeah, just try it. Just try it. And I said, okay. And I did it the first night and I got a little bit more, like a little bit of sleep. And the second night, I got a little bit more sleep. And by the third night, I was sleeping like a baby
Mhm.
because none of that stuff was swirling around in my head anymore.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want to admit it. I was like, no, 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 that didn't work. There's no way. I mean, that is like so simple, such
Yeah.
a simple concept, but it's so powerful,
Yes.
And So I went back to her the next week and she said, how did it go? And I said, oh, well, yeah, I've been sleeping for 4 days now. And she said, okay, great. Keep doing it. Keep doing this. And then a little bit after that, that's when we started to deal with my anxiety and really learning to regulate my nervous system. Now, even back then, she was a little ahead of her time, which I was grateful for because she was doing a lot of learning techniques that weren't so prevalent.
Mainstream, yeah.
So I did the tapping techniques.
Hmm.
She taught me how to use tapping and reprogramming my inner speak
Yeah,
and using affirmations, switching my verbiage in my brain, and all of that. And we also dove into some breathing techniques. And so she taught me box breathing, which I use till today. I use that today.
yeah.
And I teach people that as well. Um, and so, it was just like one thing after another, after another, after another, which was great because if she had done it all at the same time, I would have been overwhelmed. So she didn't do that. And then later in my healing journey, I started getting into the more cognitive therapies with EMDR and things like that. And, what I can say about therapies is this, a couple of things. One is, and I hear this a lot of people say therapy didn't work for me.
Mhm.
And my answer is always, you didn't find your person,
Right.
right? Um, I always tell people, interview your therapist. It's totally fine. It is your healing journey. It is not theirs. If they not are not in alignment with you, if they don't understand, because all traumas, you can't lump all traumas into one,
Yeah.
right? There are different types of trauma, and therapists are very specialized now. So when you find someone that specializes in your type of trauma, the more apt they're going to be able to guide you in the right direction. However, you also do need to be able to be 100% vulnerable with that person.
Yeah.
If you are not vulnerable with that person, your healing is not going to be what you want it to be. And so that's my first tip to people is making sure that you're aligning with people that professionals that understand your type of trauma.
Mhm.
And once you do find that person, your healing journey is going to feel more like a partnership
Mhm.
and less by yourself. So you don't feel like you're alone. Um, the second the second thing that I talk to people about is not all modalities work for everyone. There's no one size fits all, right? You have to just kind of try things and see if they work for you. If they work for you, great. If they don't, you don't have to utilize it. Um,
Yeah, that's right.
so that's super important to know as well, especially in your healing. And I always tell people, you're not alone.
That's right.
And
Yeah,
so the one thing that I do, for others is just try to give them a safe space, right? Um, give them a safe space to tell me their story and be able to feel vulnerable with me and knowing that there's no judgment. There's none. As a coach, it is my job to take someone, and I'm not a therapist, so I don't take people from, um, like they usually have to have some sort of therapy going on or that they have done some sort of healing to be able to use my services because basically, when I got to the point where I felt healthier mentally, I still felt stuck.
Mhm.
And I wish I had utilized a coach in that way. I did have coaching, but not
Not
many years
that level,
later.
yeah.
Um, so I was just still trying to figure that out. But when I was 50, um, I decided that was the line in the sand for me, and it was time for me to tell my story, and it was time for me to um, because early on I was always pushed aside because my dad was, killed in front of my young brother, and then the focus was on my mother, and the media even took 2 days to figure out he had a teenage daughter. And for so many years, people had my story in their brains of who I was as a person and however I should have handled things. I don't know. But it was my time to step out and say, okay, here I am. Here's what I've gone through. Here's my journey. And I've hit the resiliency side. And I want you to see that. I don't want you to look at me as the poor 17-year-old
Yeah.
year old girl that never healed, right? Because that's
Yeah.
not who I am. It took me 4.5 years to write the book. And the reason it took me that long is because I had to relive and feel all those feelings again. But this time I had the tools. So on those days where I just was like getting caught up in all of the emotions and everything, the energy of it, um, there were days where I was like nothing. And I'm a licensed realtor. And so I was like, I couldn't see clients. I had nothing. And I would have to learn to give myself grace. And that was really important for me because then I could reset, give myself grace, do something that I enjoyed, and reset myself so that I can continue. Um,
So,
and in doing that, that's where I found my purpose.
right.
That was it. Yeah, that was it.
So coming to the next part of our conversation, Susan. So let's talk about the people that you're helping today, right? You've come out of this whole journey. You've now lived your healing journey as well. Now, how are you helping others get on that journey itself?
Well, a couple of ways. Obviously, my book has helped people, and I'm actually getting ready to put my audiobook out. Um, I just finished in the studio. So, a lot of it was, within my journey, I realized that I could help people one-on-one as well. And I really felt like coaching was the way to go with that. Coaching has always kind of followed me through
Mm-hmm.
my life in some sort of way. When I was a hairdresser, they call us the armchair therapist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then when I got into real estate, I started realizing that real estate is a lot about mindset. It's not just
Yeah.
about skill level.
Mm-hmm.
And I started coaching agents
Mm-hmm.
as well. However, this is just different. This is a part of me when I did a lot of my healing and got to the point where I was like, all right, I'm this person. Now what? You know?
Right.
And I think people that go through some healing from trauma get to that space. They get to that place in their life where they're like, okay, I'm a different person. I've worked through a lot of my pain,
Mm-hmm.
and now what? And so that's where I come into play. I am a trauma resiliency coach, which means
Okay.
I take people who have had some sort of healing with a professional
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of meet them where they're at. There might be more that we can work with, within just kind of getting them over the hump a little bit more. But my specific thing that I do is just being able to move people forward, creating a map
Right.
of where to go. Um, so, whether that's finding their purpose in this journey themselves and maybe discovering that, or, some people, their purpose is their family, their children, their spouse, their partner. Some of them, it's career. It's all of this trauma has kept them from really stepping out into the ledge
Yeah.
and moving forward, right? And so that's where I come into play is I help people kind of, I meet them where they're at and then we create a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Because even with trauma,
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of things that therapists don't work on, and that is changing your language.
Okay.
A lot of people with trauma still have negative self-talk.
Okay.
This is not something that therapists go through because therapists deal with your past,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Negative and positive self-talk is going to help you moving forward. And
Right.
so we talk about language a lot. We talk about finding center when they feel out of sort.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of where I'm at with that.
Okay. Now, just a random question. How many people have you connected with? How many people have you impacted with your work?
Oh my gosh. A lot of people, really. I think what was really interesting about the book and what was a big aha thing for
Mm-hmm.
me was that um, I had a thought process around who this what I was going to hear, the feedback I was going to hear, right? Um, there's different things throughout the book that people can connect to,
Mm-hmm.
right? Growing up with a narcissistic parent,
Right.
so dealing with that, um, trauma, um, you know, marital issues, like all kinds of things that I deal with in this book, right? So
Mm-hmm.
there's different places where you can connect with me
Mm-hmm.
in that situation. The one thing that I never thought, never, because
Mm-hmm.
I talk about how my mom used alcohol as a coping mechanism,
Okay.
and people deal with grief differently, right? There's no judgment in that.
Okay.
However, that's what she chose to do. And there are ramifications to that.
Mm.
And that is your children, the people around you, um, are also in that addiction. And so I had a woman who had lost her husband
Mm-hmm.
to COVID.
Okay.
Very, very healthy man,
Mm-hmm.
dropped dead 5 days later, right? He was gone. And she didn't know what she was going to do.
Mm.
And I watched her on social media. She's another agent in another state. And I watched her and she was struggling.
Mm.
And I thought, maybe my book in some sort of way can help her. So
Right.
I sent it to her. I
Mm.
reached out and I sent it to her and as a gift. And I just said, read this. I hope that it helps you in some sort of way. And if it doesn't, that's fine. But my hope is that it will.
Yeah.
And she read it
Mm-hmm.
and she contacted me back and she said, Susan, I was your mother.
Okay.
And I was like, I'm sorry, what? Because that was not what I was expecting, right?
Right.
But she said, I could put myself in your mother's shoes.
Okay.
Thank you, because it only reiterated that my actions affected my daughter, affected the
Right.
people around me,
Right.
right? And I'm sober now,
Mm.
but I needed that reminder
Mm-hmm.
of this is what it does to other people. This is
Mm-hmm.
how it affects the people around you.
Yeah.
And it held me accountable, which I did not. not in a million years. I did not see that at all
Yeah.
as a response or as, and but at the same time it was just like I was very grateful
Right.
that she could connect in that way, even though
Mhm.
I didn't see it coming. I really felt like, you know, people take this book in different ways,
Right.
and I'm very grateful for that,
Mhm.
right? It's something that I didn't, not my wildest dreams did I
Yeah.
expect the book to do as well as it
Mhm.
has. I'm not with a big old publisher,
Yeah.
and everything that I've done has been all me, 100%,
Yeah.
marketing it, and everything. And so when I hear these stories, when people get back to me, and they tell me the parts that they connected with,
Hmm.
it makes it, I'm so grateful that I've been able to put that out
Yeah.
to help others. Yeah.
Now, when I mean, you mentioned that small part about marketing, right? Just want to understand, have you tried spreading your message on social media? How has it worked out? What kind of platforms are you using? Anything like
Yeah, I do. I've done a ton of podcasts.
hmm.
Um, I do utilize social media. I just got onto TikTok last
Okay.
year, and I am going to start a series on TikTok to kind of introduce myself even more.
Hmm.
And I may even just read the chapters of my book
Okay.
on social media.
Hmm.
Um, and so, just to get the message out and to be able to let people see who I am authentically as a
Hmm.
person, and that no matter what you've gone through or how you're dealing with it or whatever, there's no judgment in that, right? Everybody's journey is their journey.
Hmm.
Um, and I talked about that in the first part of our interview. So it's just a matter of what are you going to do about it, right? What is your next move?
Hmm.
What is your next thing that you're going to do? And I got to tell you, just even um, I think I put myself in their shoes by reading my own book,
Hmm.
doing the audiobook recording, and hearing my own voice,
Yeah.
telling my own story, and hearing my own message was very powerful to me. Um, it was an incredible experience, another journey in itself.
Yeah.
But it really allowed me to step back and hear in my brain what other people were taking in when they were reading my book. So I thought that was really interesting
Hmm.
for me. Um, and it gave me more of a push
Okay.
to put it out there on TikTok, on
Oh,
social
okay.
media, even more so. It was that little kick in the tush, to just like go for it.
Right.
So so that's what I'm doing, starting this week, actually.
Okay.
So yeah. Hmm.
But I mean, what are you planning? Do you think there are specific things that people will relate to? How have you seen other people do this thing? Uh, is there something that you've already experimented with?
I think a little bit.
Hmm.
I dipped my toes in it. Um, I I think this. Anytime
Uh-huh.
I pay attention to people's stories.
Hmm.
I pay attention to the people that are authentic,
Yeah.
that are raw, that are
Right.
authentic,
Hmm.
because I feel like, especially in the world the way it is right now, people need to see that.
Hmm.
That is what they need to be able to connect to, right? I have good days, I have bad days. People
Right.
need to see that, right?
Yeah.
We don't live in La La Land. It's not Shangri-La, right? So we
Yeah.
we need to be more out there. And I've already been 100% vulnerable even writing this book. So,
Yeah.
you know, no holds barred now.
Hmm.
I just feel like when you're out there and people can see you
Mm.
and feel the emotion and all of that, they're able to connect with it a little bit
Mhm.
more. And I think no matter what you're doing,
Right.
I don't care if you're selling something or whatever you're doing, when people see an authentic human being,
Yeah.
two things happen.
Hmm.
One, they connect with it. And two, if you're asking for help or you're looking for clients or you're wanting someone to buy something, they're more apt to help you out
Yeah,
because
that's right.
they're like, yeah, she's like me, right?
Mhm.
Something she said, something she did, just connected with it.
Mhm.
And then they don't feel alone, and scared because they know that, I've been on this journey. Many others have been on this journey of healing and they can do it too. So I think no matter what you do in life, like selling things or, just
Yeah.
providing a service,
Mhm.
showing people who you are as a human being
Yeah.
is important. 100%.
You picked out a small, I mean, you mentioned one small little word, companionship, in between, right? I just wanted to know from your perspective, how important was the people around you or your life companion or your family, how important it was on this journey of healing? Because
Oh,
it's something that a lot of people will relate to, right? Everybody has been through trauma, but not everybody has that family by their side at that time.
yeah, I didn't either. I
Mm.
grew up with a narcissistic mother. All right. So my dad was the opposite,
Yeah.
very present, very loving, very,
Mhm.
non-judgmental
Mhm.
dad. My mom, on the other hand, was a totally different situation.
Mhm.
Right. And we are no contact right now.
Mhm.
Um, and I'm okay. I'm at peace with that. Sometimes you don't have that support system. Now, I was very blessed
Mhm.
to have my husband, who
Mhm.
was my boyfriend back then, right? Who has gone through this and seen this evolution and seen the healing and been there with
Yeah.
me, and struggling himself,
Mhm.
right? So, um, it was really important for me, yes, to have him there with me, but it was more important for me to love myself enough to do it for myself.
Right.
You don't always have to have family members. You can pick and choose who you want on this journey. That's the
Okay.
beautiful way of life, right?
Right.
So, um, and like I said, when you heal for yourself, and it kind of it's like a ripple effect.
Okay.
It heals the people around you as
Right.
well.
Mhm.
It didn't hit my mother for some reason. But I just feel like um in my healing, I was allowed to heal my relationship with my brother.
Oh yeah.
I was able to pull myself out of situations with
Mhm.
friends or, even my husband
Mhm.
when we were having issues as well. I was able to be strong enough to, set boundaries and do what was right for me.
Mhm.
Um, but even though I tell people all the time, you're not alone, you aren't
Mhm.
alone. You're
Right.
never alone. When I say you heal for yourself, that you do,
Mhm.
right? Eh, but you can choose the healthy people to help you
Yeah.
in this journey.
Mhm.
And you can put boundaries down for the people that aren't
Right.
in the best interest of
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
being in
That's
your
right.
life. So, yeah, I feel like, yes, I was very blessed to have my husband with me along this journey. And we did split up for a little while.
Okay.
Um, and that rat still told me he was going to be there for me.
That's
Um,
great, I guess.
but we're still together, almost
Yeah.
40 years together. And but I know that not everybody has that, right? But what you need to know is that it's your life and you're able to pick and choose who
Mhm.
is
Yeah.
going to be a positive, healthy person in your life, and that is not going to deter you
Hmm.
from healing
Yeah.
because you don't need that either.
Hmm. Uh, I don't know if this is an uncomfortable question, but have you ever thought that you could have, I mean, you're now quite well on this journey of healing, but do you think that you could have helped your mother at some point with her healing? Uh,
Hmm, I don't think so because someone needs to choose to be healed.
right.
And she has never chosen
Okay.
that route. Now, I have told her more times than not
Yeah.
that she needed to seek help,
Mm-hmm.
that she couldn't do it on her own,
Mm-hmm.
and she didn't have to be the martyr, and she didn't have to, which that was the wrong thing to say. But I just said, it would help you, it would benefit you to, and she was just like, nope, therapy is for you and your brother. I don't need it,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. So I was like, all righty then. I mean, at that point, you can't make someone
Yeah.
get healing, right? You just can't do it. So I backed off and I just, I think within the last 4 years is when I
Okay.
realized
Okay.
she's, up there in age now and she's just not willing to go down that road. She's not. And um I feel like that's a lot of her animosity towards me.
Okay.
Um, Even though she doesn't want to,
Mm-hmm.
I think she's too afraid to, and when she saw me do it,
Mm-hmm.
it it's a jealousy thing. And parents should not be jealous of their children. I had a therapist tell me that.
Okay.
Um, yeah, parents should not be jealous of their children. They should be encouraging and, and that kind of thing and not live vicariously through their kids. So I just realized that there's certain people
Mm-hmm.
that you can't help if they don't want the help. You just can't.
Right.
They have to come to that conclusion themselves.
Yeah.
And no matter what I said, what I did, the encouragement I had for her,
Mm-hmm.
I still love the woman. She's still my mom. I still send
Yeah.
her love all the time. But she's chosen the life that she has chosen, and it has nothing to do with me.
Okay.
I take no responsibility for that, right?
Right.
That's her own life, and she chose to do the things that she did
Mm-hmm.
or not do. Um, and that's on her, right? So, and there's lots of people out there, and believe me, when we went no contact, I had people that were like, "Oh, but she's your mom. She gave
Yeah.
birth to you. All of the guilt
Mm-hmm.
trip that
Yeah.
happens." And I had to remind them that I am an adult and she is an adult, and I need to do what's healthy for me and my family,
Mm-hmm.
right? Being in that relationship was very toxic and it disturbed my peace. And your internal peace is really important. And
Yeah.
so um once I explained that part
Right.
of it, then people could understand. Like there's no I have no animosity towards the woman. I'm putting boundaries down and this is my boundary.
Mm.
I and she's actually the one that chose not to have a relationship with me.
Okay.
So, I just didn't go chasing after her.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I had to settle in for this was her response
Mm-hmm.
and I had to be okay with it and be at peace with it. And I am.
I mean, yeah, but I mean, as far as I know, as a close person, or as a partner, as a parent, or as a child, or as a close friend, seeing your special person in such pain is something that
Oh yeah.
people are usually not comfortable with, and they want to help the person out. But then I guess it's the person that has to first deal with it themselves and be accepting of
Yeah.
the fact that this whole thing has happened, and yeah, I need to seek help. Uh,
Absolutely. Yes. And yes, it is hard seeing your loved ones
yeah,
hurt for sure. I mean, my husband, it was torture at times. It
yeah,
really was. When he had a wife that didn't want to be here on this earth anymore, and he
right.
knew that, and it was scary for him. Um, but you know, I I didn't allow that to happen,
Mm-hmm,
and not some people aren't able to do that, unfortunately. But at the same point, it's like no matter what, even as a parent, I'm a parent of an adult children.
mm-hmm.
And that's even harder
Yeah,
because your adult children are making choices, right? And you as a parent need to step back and allow them to make those choices
yeah,
because it's their life.
right.
And so even though they're hurting or they've broken up with someone and they're, you know, sobbing uncontrollably and you want to wrap your arms around them and tell them, it's going to be okay or whatever. I still do that, but at the same time, it's like I don't try to fix it. I'm not trying to
Okay.
fix it. I'm
Mm-hmm,
not a fix it mom.
mm-hmm,
I'm a, I like to and I just dealt with this with my youngest. Um, not give up, like encourage my kids not to give up,
mm-hmm,
to try to find the best solution for the issue
mm-hmm.
that they can, so that they have all the information in front of them in order to make a decision,
Yeah.
right? Um, so I mean, as my husband watching me go through what I was going through, he had to stand back because he was like, I can be supportive to you,
Mm-hmm.
but I would limit him on that.
Okay.
I would limit him because I always felt like before I got to my healing part,
Mm-hmm.
I always felt like this is my burden, not yours.
Right.
And so I don't want to put my stuff on you. I'm not going to trauma dump on you.
Mm-hmm.
You have enough going on. You have, whatever. And I would tell my story that, like, that would be the story in my head. But what I realized is I was pushing away people too, people that were standing in front of me saying, how can I support you? And I'd be like, nope, not your
Not happening.
burden.
Yeah.
And what I realized after I healed was like, oh gosh, that was not okay because
Okay.
when someone is willing to step out and say, "How can I support you?" and you push them away, you're
Yeah.
making them feel inadequate. You're making them feel, worse.
Yep.
So after a while, when people said, "How can I help you? How can I support you?" I tell them, this is how I need the support. This is
Yeah.
what I need, right? But it took me many, many years to get to that point.
Right. Thank you so much. I mean, I don't know where to start thanking you for giving me all this insight and then giving the audience so much insight. You had a long journey and then even healing and now helping people do this. And then there's just so many facets to this, right? Uh,
Yes,
Before we close this, can you just share where people can get in touch with you if they have something to
sure.
talk about?
Absolutely. Well, if anybody out there listening needs an ear,
Mm.
um, you can reach me through my website. It's susansnowspeaks.com. And you can go in there and fill out the information. It'll send me an email and I'll contact you for sure. My website is great because it has information on my speaking. It also has information on my coaching and a little bit about the book as well. So it's kind of a one-stop shop for me. I am on Instagram. It's Susan underscore Snow one. And then I'm also on TikTok. You can find me as my name. Um, and so that's the best way to get a hold of me. Send me messages. My book is on Amazon. It is a paperback right now, and it's also in Kindle form. So,
Right. So I'm sure somebody will get in touch with you. I mean, there are a lot of people out there, and then obviously a lot of people would relate. So to the audience who's been listening and watching us, if you related to this, do leave a like. If you have something to ask, if you have something to add to our conversation, do leave a comment and don't forget to subscribe before ending the video. Thank you, Susan. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to our
thanks.
listeners and viewers for joining us. Thank you.